This is the Baymal Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today we wrap up our time in the desert and the book of Numbers with the story of Moses striking the rock and subsequently having his entrance to the promised land denied.
Denied. Yeah, what an interesting story we're going to get into today. Should we review, Brent? Yeah, review is always a good idea, yeah?
Yeah, I'm just giggling over here about the idea of God with the cosmic red rubber stamp. Just
denied. Yep. Totally.
Yeah, let's review. Let's figure out where we are, where we've been.
All right.
And what brings us to this point.
All right. Well, we start with a preface, Genesis 1 through 11. And the preface was about some big ideas. Who is God? Who is man? What is he doing? And what we found out is God is love and creation is good. And we're a part of that creation, but we've got to trust those things. And we don't, and things fall apart, and God's putting it back together. Those are the big ideas of the preface. And that leads us to the introduction, Genesis 12 through 50. We meet Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the family of God. We meet their wives and their children, and we get to see what does this look like when we start to live this story out. We're never going to live it out perfectly, so it's full of mistakes. It's full of rebellion, sins, but it's also full of forgiveness. It's full of trust. It's full of miracles. It's full of hospitality. So we get to see what that looks like. And that leads us, that sets the stage for the larger narrative. This narrative being a tale of two kingdoms. On one hand, we have the kingdom of empire, and that's the kingdom of force. We call it the kingdom of stick power. It's a kingdom of fear, of comfort, leisure, wealth, fame. It's a kingdom built on self-preservation, which is where that fear comes from. You're trying to preserve yourself. Then you got the kingdom of shalom, and the kingdom of shalom is a kingdom of invitation. It's the power of voice. It's a kingdom of self-sacrifice. It's grace. It's mercy. It's forgiveness. It's a kingdom built on trust. These two kingdoms are always in conflict. A kingdom of fear and a kingdom of trust. And so God rescues them out of their own empire, literal empire and spiritual empire. He gets them out of Egypt and he starts to get them out of this narrative of fear. He takes them to Mount Sinai where there's a wedding ceremony and they build a tabernacle, which is a retelling of Genesis 1 through 3. It's a honeymoon suite. It's also the place where the priest works. And that's important because God just told you you're going to be a kingdom of priests, but you don't even know what a priest is and what a priest does. And so God gives you the tabernacle, and it's where the priest works. It's where you can literally watch a priest every day, and you can learn from a literal priest what it means for you to live as a metaphorical priest, as a living priest in your own context. So you have the book of Leviticus, and the book of Leviticus has a form to it. It starts with atonement. There's the priest sandwich of tales of priesthood and details of priesthood and how we're going to live in the middle because we're going to live as priests. There's a section on how to party. There's a section on taking care of the oppressed. And after all of this, there's a honeymoon in the desert. Because remember, you just got married at Mount Sinai. That's where all this tabernacle priesthood language comes from, as a wedding. And so God says, well, we need to go. That's a whole lot of detail. There's a lot of detail there in the book of Leviticus. There's an awful lot of rules, an awful lot of laws, a lot of things about eating kosher, a lot of things about what you're going to wear. There's a lot of stuff. So let's go figure this out together. And you go off into the desert, in the wilderness, in the midbar for 40 years, and you learn all kinds of things. We talked about all kinds of images. You get to learn from the images of the shepherd. You get to become people of the ears and not people of the eyes. You get to learn about what it means to be shade in the heat of the sun, refuge in a storm. You get to learn what it is to be an acacia tree planted by streams of water. You get to see the warning of the bush. And we get to talk about living water and wadis and all these things we looked at in the desert. And that brings us to the end of the book of Numbers, which today is going to be the tale of Moses striking the rock. Now, we used to have these things, Brent, that we told our students about called Haggah projects. Do you remember the good old days of the Haggah projects?
The infuriating days of the Haggah projects? I was never very good at these.
Yeah, and we've mentioned Haggah before on the previous episodes here in session 1. Haggah being that word of the lion that's rumbling over its prey, the lion that's growling. We said this is the word for meditation in Psalm 1, the person who meditates on God's law day and night. And so there was this idea that we want to Haggah the text. We want to growl. Our joy is in the law of the Lord. Like we would want to get in it and chew it up and digest it and eat every single morsel of it. And so out of that spirit came these things called Haggah projects, where really just, they were like big biblical brain teasers. Like we would ask these questions and we would give it to our students in class, and then we wouldn't tell them the answer. And they knew that the answer was not going to be found in logic. Like, this wasn't a question about apologetics. This wasn't a question about reasoning or explanation. They knew that the answer to the question lied in the text somewhere. Like, they had to go find it in the text. It's in there somewhere. You got to go find it. And that was our Haggah projects. And so one of my favorite Haggah projects that we ever issued was this question: why doesn't Moses get to enter the promised land? Because we have a lot of quick answers, easy answers to that question, but none of them. I mean, this is Moses, Brent Billings. This is Moses. Like, this is Moshe. This is the guy who's like done all the things. Like, he's the great leader. This is the guy who more than once has put his own neck on the line and said, don't hurt them, blot my name out of the book of life. And we've seen a God of forgiveness, like the golden calf. This God knows how to forgive. He's forgiven some pretty big mistakes, right?
Yeah, and Moses is the most humble man on the face of the earth, according to
Numbers 12.
According to the books of Moses.
Yeah, absolutely. Numbers 12, verse 3. Absolutely. Like, this is Moses. And so, like, what is it that justifies? We've seen a God of forgiveness. We've seen Moses' character and integrity. What in the world happens in this story? It just seems like such a drastic punishment. I've heard people say, well, he hit the rock twice, and they make a big deal about how he hit it twice, which I'm not necessarily sure what the twice part would. Like, if he wasn't supposed to hit it, hitting it once wasn't a bit. Maybe it's the fact in their mind that he doubles down and he does it twice. I don't know. But that seems weird. Some people say Moses was supposed to speak to the rock, but he hit the rock, which I think is going to be a part of the larger conversation. But that's it. Like, he didn't follow instructions. Moses screwed up one instruction. And based on everything else we've seen in the story, he doesn't get to enter the promised land. There's got to be far more than that, right? This is what I was taught in Bible college. The reason Moses didn't get in was he took credit. He took the glory for God's action, because Moses will strike the rock and he's going to say, must we bring forth water from this rock? And my Bible college professor said, that's what he did wrong. He acted like it was his power, not God's. Which, again, I'm like, I mean, he got a little full of himself. He misspoke. Is that really, like, is this the drastic offense that is really calling forth? I mean, I don't know. But the other reason I have a problem with that teaching or that perspective is what the Bible literally says. Like, Brent, if you don't mind, read us Numbers 20, verse 7 and 8. This is God talking to Moses about what's going to happen.
Yeah, and just a few verses before what you were just referencing.
Yeah.
The Lord said to Moses, take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink.
Now, just literally in the words of God there, who did he say was going to bring forth water?
You, as in Moses.
Yeah. And we can say, like, well, God didn't mean that. We know it's God. And I'm not saying God, it's totally God that brought the water forth. But God's very words tell Moses, you're going. So it feels weird that Moses, like, says essentially what God says. And God's like, well, you can't enter the promised land now. I'd be like, hey, wait a minute. You just said that. But nevertheless, it just doesn't feel like that's quite the fullness of the explanation. And I will point out, since we did our first episode years ago in 2016, 2017, whenever it landed, Rabbi David Foreman over at Aleph Beta just has some dynamite teaching on this. So I recommend that people go find that. We can, if we find it something, we'll link it in the show notes. There's more than one. We'll probably link one option in the show notes. There's more than one teaching over at Aleph Beta about this. I will say that Josh Bosse has what may be my favorite teaching of any teacher I've heard on this that he does in session 6. We won't link that here because I'm not sure we give a hall pass for that one. I think people have got to go earn that one. But I think that the teaching that Josh Bosse does is just chef's kiss, if I do say so myself.
Something to look forward to, I guess.
Absolutely. It'll come. It's about, 200 episodes in front of you, but you'll get there, I promise. But my teaching originally, when I first gave this before the reboot, my teaching was often misunderstood, probably because of how I communicated it. I'm going to try to soften some edges. I'm going to try to bring some clarity to some things that I'm trying to say or not trying to say, but I'm going to stick with it here today, Brent, because I think it might be the beginning of getting where Josh Bosse maybe gets later. And I just think there's something here. And I learned some of these bits and pieces from my own teacher, Ray, on one of my trips. And I'm doing far more than he did with this teaching. I don't want to make people think he taught everything I'm going to teach today, but some of these little tidbits he pointed out in the text for me, and that's where I came to some of my conclusions. So I'm going to try to not state some things with as much gravity as I did the first time, but I'm going to see what we come up with today. Does that sound like an okay plan?
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's review the background of how we got here. We're going to be in Numbers 20 today, the story of Moses striking the rock and getting in trouble. And let's review how we got here. Moses is born to Israelites, but he gets put in a basket. He gets raised by Pharaoh's. He gets rescued by Pharaoh's daughter and raised in Pharaoh's household. There's this great midrash, by the way, about Pharaoh's daughter who pulls him out of the water. There's the midrash that says when she sees him in the water, and the Bible says that she sends her handmaiden to go retrieve Moses in the basket. But the midrash says the handmaiden refuses to go because this would be defying the orders of her father. Her father's Pharaoh. Pharaoh's ordered that all Hebrew babies be killed. She's going to be acting in absolute defiance of an imperial edict. So the handmaiden won't go. So the midrash says, like, the Hebrew word for handmaiden is the same word as just your hand. And so the midrash says that Pharaoh's daughter's hand stretches out like Stretch Armstrong, like miraculously reaches out all the way into the water and grabs the basket, because what she was doing was she was doing an act of justice. It was righteousness and justice, and it did the work of a miracle, and it brought Moses into the house of Pharaoh. And then there's even more midrash I'm not even going to get into today, but the midrash surrounding Pharaoh's daughter is phenomenal stuff. But I digress. Moses is brought into Pharaoh's household. Pharaoh is the leader of which narrative?
The Egyptian.
Yeah, specifically Empire and Shalom.
Yeah, the empire.
The empire. That's the imperial narrative. Like, this is where Moses is raised. Moses is seen killing the Egyptian who's beating Israelite slave, a Hebrew slave. So Moses is raised in the narrative of empire, but he has God's heart of justice. He's still using the tools of empire, if you notice. He's using violence to accomplish just purposes. I don't know if that makes any sense, but he's raised in an imperial household. He sees injustice and has the heart of God, but empire's tools. Like, he has the heart of God for justice and rescuing, but he has the empire's tools of violence. So God has to teach Moses a new way. And so Moses leaves. He runs from Egypt because now he's in trouble, 40 years old. And he'll spend the next 40 years till he's 80 years old, by the way, Brent, if anybody's doing the math. He'll spend the next 40 years in the desert as a shepherd.
Which I could go for some extra detail in that 40 years.
Sure.
Like, what did he need to do? Like, was he just literally shepherding sheep the whole time and just like coming to his own conclusions? Like, was God having regular, weekly one-on-ones with him, or like what was going on there?
And see, this is where I love the Images of the Desert series, because I think for 40 years, Moses is learning all these lessons we've looked at in the last handful of episodes. Like, he's learning about this, and he's learning about shepherding and how you use your voice, and he's learning about all these things. Eventually, he's going to go back to Egypt because God calls him at the burning bush. He's going to see the plagues. He's going to see God's heart for Pharaoh. He's going to see the whole Exodus. Like, Moses has literally had 40 years. And we don't have the details. You're right, Brent. But he's had 40 years in the desert to learn about God's methodology. And then it's like he takes this crash course final exam with the Exodus. Like, he's learned what God is like and how God works. He's learning about God's authority and how to use God's authority for his leadership. God's trying to teach Moses, are you going to trust my methods? Not yours, Moses. Not the methods. You have my heart, but will you use my methods? Will you trust me in how we get the job done? You want the right thing. Will you learn to do the right thing? And so we get to Exodus 17, and there's this moment where the people are crying out, and God continues to teach not just the people and not just the elders, which is clearly there in Exodus 17, but he's going to teach Moses. He needs to teach Moses. He tells Moses, I want you to take your staff. There's that staff. Notice how that staff keeps showing up. That staff has been here through the whole story. That staff was there in the Exodus story. The staff is what he threw on the ground and it became a snake and all that. The staff. I want you to take your staff and I want you to walk to Mount Horeb. And God said, I'm going to stand before you at the rock. I'm going to kind of stand. We looked at that phrase and what that meant. God's going to stand between Moses and the rock. God says, I want you to strike the rock. I want you to strike me. I'll take the blow. He's teaching Moses. Every test, Moses is being taught about God, his character, and his voice. And this continues. We get through the book of Leviticus. We get back into the story in the book of Numbers. Numbers 10 through 12 are stories about authority and rebellion. There's Moses, but there's Miriam and there's Aaron, and they're kind of rebelling against Moses' authority. There's Numbers 13 and 14. This is the story of the spies, and the spies come back and they tell a story, and the people rebel, and then they try to not rebel, and God's like, well, it's too late, don't go up, but then they still try. Like, it's all about rebellion. Nobody's following instructions. Numbers 15 through 17, more rebellion. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, more rebellion. Korah's great rebellion there. There's all these stories of rebellion. Then Numbers 19 is like this weird chapter about the water of cleansing for a dead body. The water of cleansing for a dead body, which I find interesting because Numbers 20, our chapter for today, is going to start with the death of Miriam. So how about we jump in there? Give me the first 5 verses of Numbers 20.
In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh. There Miriam died and was buried.
Okay, now wait a minute. I'm going to stop you, Brent. They stayed where? What was the place's name?
Kadesh.
Kadesh. So the place's name is Kadesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. They quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grapevines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink."
All right, so Miriam dies, and they immediately start complaining about water, which is interesting. Like I was always taught, Brent, how many times do you think the Israelites complained about water? Like, what do you feel like? You might know the answer.
All the time.
They never stop complaining, right? They're complaining about water. Every single time you turn the page of the Bible, they're always complaining about water, those complaining Israelites. Now, listen, there's a lot of passages about the Israelites grumbling. That's true. They only complain about water twice, which is crazy. But I invite you to go back and check. They only complain about water 2 times. Exodus 17, when Moses struck the rock the first time, and now when Miriam dies. There is a midrash that says when they struck the rock in Exodus 17, the reason why they never complain about water is because they put that rock, the rock that gave them water, they took that rock and they put it on a cart. And they carted that cart, actually call it a well in the midrash. They carted that rock, a well, on this cart. And whenever they needed water, Miriam just spoke to the rock, and the rock on the cart provided water for the people. Now, I know what probably everybody's thinking. That is the dumbest midrash I have ever heard. Like, what a stupid idea. Like that they would take a rock and put it on a cart and it miraculously gives them water. It's just interesting that they only complain about water twice in the first story. And now that Miriam was connected to the one who brought the water in Jewish lore and midrashic tradition. And we think that's crazy. Brent, do you mind reading me from our own Christian scriptures, 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4?
For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ.
Wait, they drank from the rock that what?
That accompanied them.
What does that mean, to accompany them?
I mean, maybe it sprouted legs, but it's going with them.
It went with them. Some translations say the rock that went with them was Christ. So Paul's making the rock Jesus and the Christ, which is awesome. But notice there that Paul is very, very directly playing off of the midrash. I'm not suggesting that Paul thinks that midrash is literal, but he's definitely playing off the tradition of this rock that they put on a cart and carted with them all through the desert. And that's this. It's interesting that Miriam, the moment she dies, they immediately start complaining about water. They haven't complained about water as long as Miriam's been alive. Now she's dead, and they complain about water. But I also noticed when I was studying this passage, there's no mourning for Miriam. There's no mention of the people mourning for Miriam, which is interesting because they will mention in the very next chapter, Aaron's going to die. They're going to mourn Aaron's death publicly. Moses is going to die. Are they going to mourn for Moses?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to mourn for Moses. But there's no mourning for Miriam. And I wonder, this is his sister, I wonder if there's an anger that's beginning to brew inside of Moses. I don't know, but it would make sense to me. It just strikes me that Miriam would be such a key member of this community, and there's no mention of mourning for Miriam. But let's pick back up in the passage that you were reading and start where we left off in verse 6.
Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink." So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, And Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord and where he was proved holy among them.
Wait, what was this place called?
Meribah.
Meribah. But wasn't it called, what was it called at the beginning of the story?
They were at Kadesh.
They're at Kadesh. So it's called Kadesh,
I guess.
but it's called Meribah?
Sure.
Interesting. So there's this passage here, and I'm wondering if there's a test going on here. We're not told. It's not like the Exodus story where it identifies. It says literally in the biblical text, like there's a test taking place, or God did this to test them. But I've wondered if there's a test going on here. Maybe not for the people, maybe for Moses. I don't know. But if there was a test going on here, let's assume that there is a test going on here. Let's go back to our 3 tests, Brent. There's a test of the heart, a test of the soul, a test of the might, or very. So our vav and our nefesh and our mayod, that whole Shema prayer that we looked at before. Which test do you suppose this would be? Let's remind ourselves, Brent. What was the heart? Heart was a test of the what?
Of like your will to do what God tells you to do.
Right. It's a test of the will, a test of your choice, a test of your volition. Absolutely. It's a test of worship, what you choose to do, right? We would say free will type of there's a test of the will. All right. And then test of the soul was what?
That's like the essence of who you are, essentially.
We remember saying, like, God, you don't get me unless you blank. That was putting God to the test. Like, you don't get my whole self unless you prove yourself. And then test of the might, just to remind ourselves, was
the like everything you have in you.
Resources, strength, abilities, talents, using what you have for the benefit of other people. It quite clearly to me, I don't think it's test 3. I think we can put that aside. But there's this wrestling match for me. Is this test 1 or test 2? If this is a test, and I'm not sure it is. If it is it a test of the heart, or is it a test of the soul? Which one feels right to you, Brent?
It kind of feels like soul.
In what way?
If I'm thinking about the lack of mourning, it's like, oh, if these people aren't going to mourn for my sister, then why would they get this from me?
Okay, so maybe, I like that. Maybe a test of Moses' soul. How about the people? Are the people doing a soul test?
Yeah.
Do you think you see that with the people in this story? Or are they...
Yeah.
Have the people done... You're looking at the biblical text, Brent. Are they testing God in this story?
Yeah. In some ways.
Tell me why.
It's so crazy to me that they've been going for this long, and then they're like, why did you even bring us out here? It's like, well, what do you mean why?
Okay.
Like, what have we been doing for the last however many years? And everything that you've needed has been provided for you.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you have this like one little thing happens and you're like, oh, why did we even come out here?
Right. You said, why did you bring us out here? Who was you?
Well, I guess they're speaking to Moses.
Yeah. See, that's different than Exodus 17. In Exodus 17, they were very clearly testing God. And Moses calls them out on it. He says, "Oh, you're putting God to the test, and you're in some dangerous territory."
Yeah.
And here they're quarreling with Moses very, very directly. They're talking to Moses. They don't have a beef with God. They have a beef with Moses. In fact, Moses calls them. He says, "Listen here, you." What does he say, Brent?
You rebels.
You rebels. And the word for rebel was the same word for bitter. It was Mara. Well, what took place at Mara?
That was the test of the heart.
That was the test of the heart. That was the bitter well. The bitter well was at Mara. Mm-hmm. So there's some indication here that if there's a test of the people, it's a heart test. I'm not sure there's a test of the people, but if there is a test of the people, it's a test number 1. I do wonder if there's another test not of the people, but I do wonder if there's a soul test when it comes to Moses. Is there any links? Would there be any links to test number 2? Now, we said this place was called what, Brent?
Well, in verse 1, it says Kadesh.
Okay.
Also, notably, in verse 14, right after our portion, it says Kadesh again.
Okay, so this place is definitely called Kadesh. This is definitely a Kadesh.
Definitely.
Okay.
Except verse 13 says Meribah.
Okay, so there's Meribah. Dang it. So it's called Kadesh for sure, but there's also Meribah. Have we ever heard Meribah before, Brent?
We have.
Where?
In the same passage where it says Mara.
No.
Is it not?
No, but you're close. The waters of Meribah have been seen before, which sure sounds like the waters followed them, by the way, but I digress.
Oh. Not Mara. Massah.
Meribah and Massah at the place called Rephidim, which is which chapter, Brent?
17
of
Exodus.
Which what happens in the story of Exodus 17?
That's the water story.
That's the first striking of the rock. So the two strikings of the rock are tied together by name. They're definitely different places. The one place is Rephidim. It's Massah. This is Kadesh. They're not the same geographical location. They're not the same place at all, but the waters are the same. There is a tie between these two stories. I don't see the people quarreling with God. I see Moses trying to make this about something that it's not. And we will hear so much more goodies about this in session 6, I promise. It will be so wonderful. Brent, can you give me Exodus 17, 5 through 7? Let's just remind ourselves. We're gonna bounce right now between Exodus and Numbers, the two stories. When Moses struck the rock the first time, and right now when he strikes the rock and gets in trouble. The first time he strikes the rock and does it right. This time he strikes the rock and does it wrong. We're going to bounce between these two stories. Let's start by reading Exodus 17, 5 through 7.
The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
All right, so there's that Meribah reference right there. All right, so these are the two Meribah stories tied together by name. The waters are the same waters. Geographical location is different, but these stories are linked together. They're tied together, whether it's because a well is put on a cart and carried through the desert, or because the author is trying to tie these stories together. Let's just read those first. Give me 5 and 6 one more time in Exodus 5 through 6. And I want us to see how similar these two passages are in Exodus and Numbers. So give me Exodus 17, 5 through 6 one more time, Brent.
The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel.
All right. Now let's jump over to Numbers, and I want you to read Numbers 9 through 11 and feel and listen. If you're listening to this podcast, feel all the elements of this thing that are all the parallels, all the elements that are the same. Go ahead and listen.
Don't worry, everyone. Chapter 20, 9 through 11, not 3 chapters of Numbers.
Oh, goodness. Goodness. Yes. Thank you.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank.
All right, so there's all kinds of, and if we were to read a bigger portion of the passage, it'd be all kinds of parallels. God speaking to Moses. There's instruction that he's taking the staff. There's people. There's the rock. He strikes the rock. There's water. Like all the same like pieces, variables, and elements are there. But there's a couple things that are different. You stay in Numbers, Brent. Brent's going to stay in Numbers 20. I'll jump over to Exodus 17, and we'll read this. I don't know if anybody caught it already. If they caught it, they're screaming at their podcast player right now. They're like, I see it. But I'm sure there are some that they haven't seen it yet. So let's read this. I'll read it again. Let's see here. The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. Brent, Numbers 20.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank.
I don't know. Anybody listening? Did they hear it? Did they catch it?
There's no elders in Numbers.
There's no elders in Numbers. That's true. Let's see here. I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to emphasize something. Hopefully we'll see it. The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. Go ahead and give me Numbers 20, Brent.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock. And Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank.
All right, now if I go back to our podcast episode in Exodus 17, when Moses struck the rock the first time, we had a fun little drawing. Do you remember the drawing, my little stick figure Moses with a beard, and there was a mountain, there was a big little red blob that represented where God was standing? We said the whole point of that phrase, that God would stand panim, the rock, was the fact that God was positioned between Moses and the rock. And so when Moses struck the rock, it was in picture, and maybe even more literally than that, like Moses is literally striking the mountain of God, God standing there. And I don't know what the elders actually saw. He took the elders with him, like you pointed out, like they're there, but they're essentially catching the message. I'm striking God on behalf of the people. I will take the blow. You're going to strike me. It's the same phrase in Numbers 20, only it's not God that's put there. Who was it that was put in front of the rock? It's the same phrase. It's translated a little differently in the NIV, but the same phrase is panim. But who's panim the rock?
The assembly.
The assembly. Read it one more time and listen to that. Know now, as you hear Brent read this, notice that phrase is the exact same phrase of God standing before the rock. Go ahead.
So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock. And Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank.
All right, so these two stories clearly go together. By the author, these two stories are drawn to two strikings of the rock. These two stories are supposed to go. There's something that we learned in Exodus 17 that is supposed to inform what Moses is supposed to be seeing and learning here. I read that same passage. I use the exact same exegetical reasoning to see Moses putting the people between him and the rock. Now, I suggested in the original go-around, I wonder even if Moses literally killed. Is that why it says he struck the rock twice? Did he kill two people that day? I don't know. For a lot of people, that was a bridge too far, which I totally get. It was an outlandish, sensational idea. Don't hang on to that. I still wonder it.
Is it that same strike to kill word?
It is. It's the same strike to kill. Nakah. It's the same strike to kill when he kills the Egyptian. It's the same strike to kill when God strikes the Israelite gods with the plagues. It's the same strike to kill when God says, "Come to the mountain of Horeb and strike the rock." It's the same Nakah word, strike to kill. And so Moses gathers the assembly at the rock and he strikes to kill. Now, I'm not trying to suggest to you that Moses literally killed two people. Maybe he did. Maybe that's not the point. Although, I would add, if he did, that would be justification for him not entering the promised land.
Yeah.
At least that explanation would hold some level of water. But at very least, hear it in the story. Moses' anger, the first time Moses was supposed to learn something, the elders were supposed to learn something about the character, the integrity, the nature of who this God is. I'll take the blow. I'll take the blow on behalf of the people. Moses, I want you to go talk to the rock. And Rabbi Foreman, I've already linked it, has some great teaching on what God's trying to do by getting Moses to go talk to the rock, to speak to the rock. Moses, I need you to use your voice. And I know you're angry right now. And I know you're hurting because of the death of your sister. But I need you to use your voice right now, not your stick this time, Moses. Don't use your stick. That's what empire would do. That's what Pharaoh would do, Moses. I need you to use your voice. Whether he literally kills people or not my point. My point being his anger is directed. The strike is directed, not where it ought to be. His anger gets the best of him. He goes back. He reverts back to using that method of empire. And his anger, at the very least, is directed at the people. Listen here, you rebels. And I think Josh in session 6 is going to do a great job of pointing out, I'm not even sure the people are even in the wrong at all. I think the people, Josh is going to suggest, are even in the right. But Moses has let himself get into a very bad place. And this is what's going to make, God's going to end up saying later in Numbers 20, because you did not, and the word here is going to be demonstrate me or show me as holy before the people. Well, what have we always said throughout session 1? What is the thing that makes God different, Brent? We said God is different because of his?
God is different because he's this God of shalom, this God of restoration, this God of peace.
Of love, of mercy, of forgiveness. You have this opportunity, Moses, to show my people who I am, because I'm holy, I'm different, I'm kadosh. But because you did not demonstrate me and show me to be kadosh, you made me look like all the other gods that are out there. You had this moment to use your voice and not your stick, to not live out of your anger or your self-preservation or your insecurity. You had this moment to show, but you resorted to empire. Moses, I need you to use your voice. If we have any doubt that this lesson is about using our voice and not our stick, the very next handful of stories after this are going to be the story of what, Brent?
This is it's the Balaam story.
It's the Balaam story. So we have like the very next set of stories. There's a little bit in between, but the very next group of stories that are well known is the story of a donkey that talks.
Yeah.
Like, how committed to God. And it's a story of a prophet, Balaam, who's beating the donkey with his stick. He's using violence. And God's going to open the mouth of a donkey to talk because God wants us to understand the way of my kingdom. The way of shalom is not a way of Pharaoh's stick. It's not a way of violence. It's not a way of using your authority. It's not a way of using your title or your position. It's a way of using your voice and being the kind of leader with the kind of character and integrity that could invite people and they would want to follow. It's not the story of a leader that has the right or the authority or the title or the power to flex and make people do what they want. This is what I need you to teach my people, Moses. I can remember hearing this lesson for the very first time from my teacher. It was in the sanctuary of the church I grew up in. And I remember hearing this, and I was this young, I don't know, I think I was 19, 20. Well, I was older than that. I was probably 24, 25 years old, but I was still this young pastor who had not learned this lesson. And I was not learning this lesson when I first heard it. And I remember, like, I just wanted to crawl under the chairs in the sanctuary, because I realized I kept trying to lead people because I had the authority to tell them what to do. I kept trying to lead people because I had the authority to cast vision. I was not leading people because I was humble or full of mercy or full of shalom or inviting people. I was telling, I was coercing. I led like Pharaoh. I didn't lead like a shepherd. And that's one of the things that I think about a lot when I think about this story. And I can't wait for people to get to hear Josh's version of this as well. But that's probably good enough for today. It'll get us started anyway. It's always been a meaningful lesson for me, and a place where we can at least plant our feet to keep moving forward, Brent.
Yeah, I think, it parallels the idea of the Exodus story and how Pharaoh used his stick in a particular way. And Moses has a stick too, but he uses it in a different kind of way.
Yes.
And the staff is still here.
Yes.
Like the Lord said to Moses, take your staff.
Yep.
And then it says, so Moses took the staff just as he commanded him.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, he's supposed to have the staff,
yep,
but then he uses it in the wrong way.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Frustrating, because I know that I've been in that position and used the power and influence I had in the wrong way. I think that's pretty normal for a lot of us, unfortunately.
Yikes. But yes.
A convicting episode, Marty.
Yep.
That will do it for this week. We'll be back next week to dig into Deuteronomy. But in the meantime, if you have a chance, check out the Aleph Beta link and see some of that stuff from Foreman. That will be on the website and in your show notes. But thanks for joining us on the Bema podcast this week. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hi, I'm Kinimbi, a Bema listener and group facilitator in Searcy, Arkansas. And here's the prayer from episode 30's companion. God, may we always remember that you are different, calling us to be different too. May we humbly walk along this journey looking for ways to serve as your priests, your kingdom, your shade, and your partners in blessing the world. Leading with our voices, trembling yet strong, may we sound more like you each passing day, setting aside our power, wealth, anger, and self to love you and others with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with all of our very. Amen.